Have you ever had one of those days at work where you feel like you're just running on a hamster wheel? You're doing the same tasks, hitting the same walls, and you just have to think, there's got to be a better way to do this. Well, you're right, there is, and it's called Business Process Management, or BPM for short. It's really all about finding those messy, tangled up ways we get things done and, well, untangling them.
We've all been there, right? That feeling of pure chaos where nobody's quite sure who's doing what, key information just vanishes, and a super simple task somehow turns into a week-long ordeal. Now, this isn't just frustrating. That kind of chaos, it has a real cost. It drags down everything: productivity, morale, and yeah, you guessed it, the bottom line.
And when you really look at it, the signs of this chaos are everywhere. You see time just wasted on tasks that don't need to be done twice. You see a huge spike in errors that somebody else has to fix. And of course, you get the blame game, where everyone's pointing fingers. But maybe the worst part? You have no data, so you can't even figure out why it's all going wrong. And the result of all that? You get a team of totally demoralized people who are just exhausted from fighting the system.
So, what's the antidote to all this chaos? Well, it's not about just working harder. It's about working smarter. And that's exactly where business process management comes into play. It's really a framework for taking a big step back, looking at all that mess, and bringing in some much-needed order.
Okay, so here's the official textbook definition. But what you really need to get is that BPM isn't about little one-off fixes here and there. No, it's a whole discipline. It's about looking at a process from the absolute start to the very finish, digging in, finding ways to make it better, and this is key, watching it constantly to make sure those improvements are actually working.
Let's make that even simpler. At its core, BPM is just a different way of seeing your business. Instead of a building or an org chart, you see it as a massive collection of processes. Think about it. Opening a customer account is a process. Fulfilling an order is a process. Hiring someone new is a process. BPM is just the mindset that says, hey, let's actually manage these things on purpose instead of just letting them happen.
And I absolutely love this slide because it just cuts through all the noise. Forget all the business jargon for a second. A process is just a map. It's a map from a starting point, a need, like I'm hungry, through a series of steps to a solution, hunger satisfied. Every single process in a business, no matter how complex it seems, is really just a map like this one. And BPM? It's the art and science of drawing a better, faster, and smarter map.
All right, so that's the big idea. But what does this actually look like in the real world? This is where it gets really exciting. Because when you do this right, the results can be absolutely dramatic. Let's check out a real example.
So, picture this bank. Their whole system for opening a new account was a complete mess. A customer would go online and get one piece of info, then call in and get a totally different story. The whole thing could drag on for weeks, and you can imagine the result: frustrated customers who would just give up and go somewhere else. It was a classic broken process causing real serious damage.
So what happened? The bank brought in BPM. They mapped out that entire broken process, found every single pain point, and redesigned the whole thing. The solution was to build it around one central system. Now, it didn't matter if you were online, on the phone, or standing in a branch. Everyone worked from the same information. And the result? Approval times for a new account went from days, sometimes even weeks, all the way down to just minutes. That's not just a small improvement. That's a total transformation.
And here's another great visual. On the left, you've got a company's old, clunky purchasing process. You can see all these departments just sending paper copies of things back and forth. It's a mess, right? It's slow and depends on people catching mistakes. Now look at the redesign process on the right. See that new box in the middle? A central database. It acts as the single source of truth, and suddenly everything gets way, way simpler.
And just look at these numbers. This is honestly incredible. In the before state, it took 500 people to manually check and match 3 different documents for every single purchase order. 500. After they redesigned the process, that number dropped to just 120. I mean, can you even imagine the cost savings, not to mention how many fewer errors they'd have? It's huge.
Now here's something that is absolutely crucial to understand. BPM is not a one-and-done kind of deal. You don't just fix a process and then walk away patting yourself on the back. The world is always changing, right? Technology gets better, customer needs shift, so real BPM has to be a continuous cycle of improvement.
And this right here, this is the engine that drives it all. It's called the BPM lifecycle. And the most important thing to notice is that it's a loop. It's not a straight line with an endpoint.
You discover a process, you analyze it, you redesign it, you implement the changes, but then you monitor it. You see how it's doing. And that information feeds right back into the beginning of the loop.
So let's just quickly walk through the first part of that cycle. It all starts with discovery. And this means you have to be brutally honest and document the process exactly as it is today. Not how you wish it was, but how it really works. Then comes analysis. That's where you hunt down the bottlenecks, the wasted steps, the spots where errors always happen. And only after you've done that can you move on to redesign, which is where you get to dream up a better future, a new to-be process.
Then, the second half of the cycle is all about making that new dream a reality. You've got implementation, which is where you actually roll out the new process. This could be new software, new training, whatever it takes. And then comes what might be the most important step, monitoring. You collect cold, hard data. Is it faster? Is it cheaper? Is it better? And all those new insights, they don't just go into a report that sits on a shelf. Nope, they become the starting point for the next round of improvement. It just keeps going.
So, after all of this, all these cycles and maps and analyses, why should anyone care? Why should a business put all this time and energy into BPM? Well, it's because the payoff is so much bigger than just fixing a few little annoyances.
When you get right down to it, this is about building a fundamentally better company. A company that's more efficient, sure, but also one that's agile, one that can turn on a dime when the market changes, and most importantly, one that's laser-focused on giving its customers a great experience. BPM is the blueprint for making that happen.
So when you boil it all down, the benefits are pretty clear. You get reduced costs. We saw that with the purchasing example. You get a huge boost in productivity because people aren't wasting time anymore. You get fewer errors, standardized processes for consistent quality, and you build that all-important business agility that helps you stay ahead of the curve.
But if there's one big idea I want you to walk away with, it's this. It's a shift in your thinking. When you embrace BPM, your processes stop being just the way we've always done things. They become valuable, strategic assets. Just like your brand or your people, your processes can be fine-tuned and managed to give you a real, measurable edge over the competition.
So, let me leave you with a question to chew on. Think about your own work, or heck, even just your daily life. What's that one frustrating, inefficient, chaotic process that just drives you crazy? Now that you know a little about this, what would a better map for that process look like?